is somewhere where we can work on him, and we couldn't do that while he was imprisoned.
But another valuable member of the Victor Pearce clan was scooped up in the police raids.
One particular witness had plenty to offer in relation to his knowledge regarding Walsh Street.
What's your full name?
Jason John Ryan.
Right, Jason. At present, we're in Walsh Street, South Yarra.
Jason Ryan was Victor Pearce's nephew and had grown up in awe of his criminal family.
You started a car?
Yes, a white Commodore.
A white Commodore?
Yes.
Right. Jason was always going to be very hard work for any investigator because, one, he was involved in a criminal family, two, he'd had dealings with corrupt police over a long period. So just to get him to trust what we were doing was going to be a difficult task as well.
You realise that anything you say or do in this reenactment will be used in any later court appearances?
Yes.
Are you still prepared to take part?
Yes.
He knew that his life would have been over had they suspected for 1 minute that he was talking to the police about this. But he genuinely felt remorse over what happened at Walsh Street.
Well, you earlier told us that you'd left a flat in Gordon Grove with 4 other people. Now, at this stage, who are you with?
With Anthony, Victor, Naka, Jed, and myself.
And what was the plan by everyone when you came here?
Come here to ambush the police.
And do what?
Kill them. Because they killed Graham the night before.
It was Jason Ryan and forensic evidence that allowed police to piece together what they believed happened that night in Walsh Street.
When the police have arrived, they've gone to this car. One member approached the driver's side, one member approached the passenger side, was checking out the registration label and had made some notes in his book. Was called over by the person sitting behind the driver's side because he'd obviously located the wires that had been blatantly pulled down to give it the appearance of a stolen car.
The purpose of today's event is to try and recreate what happened when Constable Damien Eyre and Constable Steve Tynan were fatally shot. Constable Tynan is in about that position just on the rise from getting out of the vehicle when he is then shot at about that angle to the top of the head. And Constable Tynan then falls back into the vehicle. At the same time, Constable Eyre comes off to the rise and is shot across his back with this sawn-off shotgun. He then turns after being shot. The firearm goes off again in the air. This offender turns away at another shot which goes into a nearby building. At that same time, a second offender comes in and has then taken Constable Eyre's service revolver and shot him at close range, approximately a distance of 4 inches or thereabouts, to the right side of the head.
And then he was shot again when he was on the ground.
Now, what happened after you went back to Gordon Grove?
I was back to Gordon Grove, and about 5 minutes later, not even 5 minutes later, Anthony came, and he was pretty white in the face, and he got upstairs and he goes to me that he grabbed a gun off one of the police and shot him twice with it.
Police charged Jason Ryan after he admitted to being involved and immediately bailed him back into their own custody. And not long after got Anthony Farrell and interviewed him and decided that they would charge him with murder, put the pressure on him and see what he said, see if they could break him. And it didn't work. He had some rather special and significant advice from a lawyer called Andrew Fraser and said nothing more.
A secret bugging device was planted in the cells of the Melbourne Police Watch House to record a conversation between Anthony Farrell and his solicitor, Andrew Fraser.
Jason couldn't have. So apparently they said to me.
Well, I'm not Jason either. It's Jason's turn.
Well, that's right. Victor would have been pinched. Victor would have been pinched by now.
I won't talk to you, right? I'll tell you what they've done.
Yeah.
Nailed you because they reckon you're the weak link in the chain.
Yeah.
And by putting enormous pressure on you like they're doing, they want you to be the one that cracks and gives everybody out.
With Farrell talking with Fraser, it was a discussion between two criminals. Unless you knew different, that's exactly how it would have come over. One crook talking to another.
Farrell wasn't talking, but Jason Ryan, now a protected witness, had plenty to say. His version of events kept changing, but police believe they eventually got the truth.
Chair. We're able to then determine later on who we believe to be the actual shooters, and that evidence indicated that it was both Jed Horton in the first instance and then Victor Pearce.
With Pearce in jail, attention turned to Jed Horton, and soon this investigation would enter a deadly new phase.
This latest killing has the underworld fearing a macabre game of tit-for-tat is developing.
Police investigations into the Walsh Street killings were focusing on a gang of armed robbers and their associates. The leader and prime suspect, Victor Pearce, was jailed after the killings on other charges. His nephew, Jason Ryan, and his mate, Anthony Farrell, had been charged with the murders, but police believe there were others involved.
Is what you've told us today the truth about what happened at Walsh Street?
Yep, there's no more to it, and that's it.
Ryan was talking to police and naming names. One of them was Jed Horton.
We'd been watching Horton for a period of time. We knew where he'd moved to.
They tracked him to a caravan park in Bendigo.
The raid was stock standard raid. Unfortunately for Horton, he had, from memory, 6 or 7 firearms at his disposal.
23-year-old Jed Horton of Moonee Ponds was shot dead by police, who believe he was the trigger man in the Walsh Street ambush on October 12.
My understanding was that when they got to the door to go through it, it was a different door than they thought, and they took a bit longer to get through. And when they got through, Jed Horton already had a gun.
There was a loss of life. It was good that it was Horton and not the police, because we'd already lost enough police at that stage.
This latest killing has the underworld fearing a macabre game of tit-for-tat is developing.
We'd been in Bendigo for a long time, and the reason we were there for a long time was to gain evidence. So our next move was to talk to him, and that's why we made that move. So for people to rumour that the police went there with the intention of killing him is certainly unfounded, and it's certainly not substantiated in any way.
Well, if you point guns at police, and if that's what he did, and he was certainly well armed, then the Special Operations Group are trained not to ask questions at that point.
As Jason Ryan continued to speak to police, he added his uncle, Trevor Pettingill, to the list of those involved in Walsh Street. As police pressure on the underworld continued, Trevor was abducted by 4 masked men.
The legs, buddy. Don't they seem to work?
He was driven out of town
Without the tape then.
and brutally bashed. Then given a message.
Tell the cops everything you know. Remember? Tell them everything.
The identity of the attackers would never be known. With Victor Pearce already behind bars, police continued their hunt for evidence at the home of Victor and his wife Wendy.
Get away! Get away!
In an extraordinary operation, their house was literally pulled apart by police. It was a symbolic event for a police force sending a message that the days of a criminal dynasty were numbered. In December 1988, police charged Victor Pearce with the murders of Stephen Tynan and Damien Eyre.
Charge innocent people for something what they haven't done.
Horton rang you for you to either give him your car or for you to get him a car.
Another name added to the Walsh Street investigation was Gary Abdallah, a young car thief. Abdallah had been lying low for months, fearing he was a target for police.
People tell me that I'm going to be knocked. What am I going to do?
Our information in regard to Gary Abdallah suggested that he was responsible for acquiring the stolen cars on some jobs, and it was believed that he had provided advice or assistance to the main players at Walsh Street.
Do you recall speaking to Jed that night?
Because I'm Nicky used to phone, I don't use phones.
After this interview, Abdallah again disappeared.
Gary Abdallah was hit by a volley of shots in his Drummond Street Carlton flat after allegedly producing an imitation pistol while being questioned by police. Since then, he'd been fighting for his life in St Vincent's Hospital, but died this morning with a bullet still lodged in his brain. Abdallah was a close associate of Victor Pearce, charged with the murders of Constables Tynan and Eyre. He was also a friend of armed robber Graham Jensen, gunned down by detectives at Narre Warren the day before the Walsh Street killings, and of another suspect, Jed Horton, shot dead during a raid on a Bendigo caravan park.
At the time of the Abdallah shooting, there was a suggestion that people were starting to think that the police just running around, shooting these people, that we were conducting an honest and fair investigation, but a very hard investigation, and we were doing it in the best way we could.
Abdallah's death spooked another of the gang police had under surveillance for Walsh Street, Peter McAvoy.
I'm concerned for my welfare. I'm concerned for my life. And indeed anybody else that is with me when these cowboys come charging through with their guns drawn.
He's one of those career criminals whose reputation as being a coward and probably displayed that in various other forms. So coming out in the media, making out someone was trying to kill him, to big note himself, is not a real surprise.
I expect to be charged because I've been told that I will be.
Just days after this interview, McAvoy was arrested while reporting for bail and also charged with the Walsh Street murders. In the months to come, the murder charges against Jason Ryan would be dropped, but Victor Pearce, Peter McAvoy, Anthony Farrell and later Trevor Pettingill would all stand trial for the Walsh Street murders. But in the lead-up to that trial, the wife of accused Victor Pearce was about to drop a bombshell that would turn this story on its head.
It's true that no one's forced you to...
No, I'm here on my own free will.
Come with us?
Yes.
Police investigating the Walsh Street killings needed to link the suspects with physical evidence, in particular the shotgun used in the murders. When a shotgun was discovered in Melbourne's Royal Park Golf Course, they had their vital missing link.
That was proved to be the murder weapon used at Walsh Street by our ballistic experts.
Police suspected the gun had also been used in armed robberies.
We had a member who painstakingly went through those photos and was able to prove that the KTG shotgun that was our murder weapon at Walsh Street was also the same weapon that was used in a number of armed robberies.
Investigators believe the armed robberies were committed by Victor Pearce and his gang, and they were about to get a breakthrough not even they expected.
Well, it's true that no one's forced you to...
No, I'm here on my own free will.
Come with us?
Yes.
The wife of Victor Pearce, one of the accused, was about to change sides.
To have her involve herself in the Walsh Street murders to the extent that she wanted to tell us what happened, and involve her husband, Victor Pearce, in the actual murders was a surprise, and we were very sceptical.
Just a few months before, Wendy was protesting her husband's innocence in the Walsh Street killings.
But I know in my own heart Victor's innocent of this and I have to do something about it. I cannot, this is my husband's life we're talking about. I made that statement because I was scared, because if I didn't, Victor would kill me. He would have killed me.
Wendy had been Victor's alibi on the night of the shooting, saying they'd spent the night together in a motel.
The truth is, Victor did get out of bed that night. He did leave the motel. I heard him go and I heard him come back.
Over a series of interviews, Wendy told police Victor planned and carried out the killings as revenge for the death of his mate, Graham Jensen.
He spoke to Mecca and he said, we'll knock him. He said, we'll knock the jacks. Victor got up and I said, where are you going? He said, I'm going to make Mecca and Jed to knock the jacks that killed Graham.
Mecca and Jed?
Yeah, Mecca and Jed, yeah.
The two were shot in the head at close range in what is the first multiple police killings since Ned Kelly shot 3 last century.
The news come on and it said about 2 policemen being shot dead in South Yarra. They didn't say where, or they just said South Yarra. And Victor said, right whack. And I laughed.
Well, Wendy was possibly the best witness the Crown had. She said that her husband was involved, had confessed, was an active armed robber.
That's the shotgun.
She'd identified another member of the team that killed the police, Jed Horton.
The person you previously identified as being Jed Horton.
That's Peter McAvoy.
How do you know that?
Oh, he's shaped here.
And she looked at surveillance photos of a bank robbery that had used the same gun that was used to kill the police, and put her husband there and Jed Horton there.
Why do you say that's Victor Pearce?
I just know Victor. That is Victor.
And in a bizarre twist, Wendy revealed why she was just as devastated as her husband over Graham Jensen's death.
Why'd you feel so strongly?
Because I had a relationship with Graham for a period of about 8 months. A sexual relationship.
Victor was charged with murdering 2 young policemen as a result of his best mate being shot by the police. Do you think he'd have put that much effort in for his best mate if he'd have known that his wife was having an affair with him? It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Fortunately, she was able to provide a lot of material that was able to be corroborated. She then became a very key and critical witness for the prosecution.
I was in great fear of that family.
Yes.
Because numerous times Victor used to say, once you're in this family, otherwise you're leaving a wooden box.
Police needed to keep Wendy happy and away from her criminal family, so she became part of the newly formed Witness Protection Program.
I looked after Wendy from when she first came into the program right up until she was exited from the program. It was always a bit of a guessing game as to what sort of day you were going to be presented with as far as Wendy and her emotional state was concerned. When you spend that much time with someone, obviously you get to develop a relationship with them. There were occasions where she went into an emotional meltdown. There were plenty of occasions where we had laughs. There was a lot of good times involved.
Stories later surfaced of a sexual relationship between Wendy and her protectors.
Wendy Pearce's sexy love letters were not to her husband, but to police assigned to guard her.
This is Wendy Pearce's letter to one of her police guards. And another. And another. She sent them her love, her kisses. She used nicknames she gave to her police minders, and police say she constantly used blackmail to get what she wanted, telling police if she didn't go to nightclubs, restaurants or hotels at her whim, then she would refuse to give evidence.
I mean, any time there's going to be that level of contact on such a consistent basis, you know, obviously people are going to express feelings for each other. It was something that I was aware of, but I don't know at any point it compromised what we were doing. I think it just added a human element to it.
But after becoming the prime witness, Wendy was about to deal the case a devastating blow. In the days leading up to the trial, she refused to give evidence against her husband.
As it became quite clear as to what happened, she was able to make contact with Victor Pearce over a long period of time and forge a new plan as to how she would damage the prosecution case. And that was allowed to occur because of the way in which the witness protection scheme ran in those days.
I believe that she always intended to give evidence while she was in the program, and I believe that really only derailed very, very late in the piece, just prior to the actual trial taking place.
It's out of my hands, okay?
And I think the crew that were tasked with looking after her in those final weeks were the wrong crew.
A leopard never changes its spots. She manipulated the witness protection scheme and the members that were guarding her.
Whatever her motivation, the prosecution case was crippled. The jury would never hear Wendy say that Victor Pearce, Peter McAvoy and Jed Horton were responsible for the Walsh Street killings, and the fallout would be devastating.
It's a day I will never, ever forget. It was terrible.
In the lead-up to the Walsh Street trial, police investigators believe they had a strong case. Their trump cards were two witnesses from the criminal underworld of the accused, Victor Pearce's wife Wendy and his nephew Jason Ryan. But in a major blow to the case, Wendy Pearce refused to testify against her husband Victor, a decision by the trial prosecutor not to call her as a hostile witness left the police investigators horrified.
We certainly disagreed totally with that because we believe everything should go before the jury.
The decision not to put Wendy Pearce on the stand meant the jury never heard her version of who was responsible for the murders.
And I said, where are you going? He said, I'm going to meet Macca. He said, to knock the Jacks at Kilgrave.
The key evidence came from Jason Ryan, whose credibility was torn to shreds on the stand. After 7 weeks and 94 witnesses, the jury delivered its verdict.
7 Nightly News with Jennifer Kites.
Tears, hugs and scuffles as the Walsh Street Four are acquitted of murdering 2 police constables.
I'm on top of the world! I told you all along my son was innocent!
Today's jury decision has stunned senior police who spent a futile 2.5 years investigating the Walsh Street murders.
It was a sad day for the community in that those that should have been held accountable for the death of Stephen Tynan and Damien Eyre were set free.
It's a day I will never, ever forget. It was terrible.
I was gutted, actually, and I don't think I was alone there. I think, the force generally were.
We were in a state of disbelief. I think we felt that almost 3 years of our lives had been wasted.
There's a hell of a lot of difference in my view from being found not guilty to being found innocent.
Victor Pearce and Peter McAvoy were taken back into custody and later found guilty of an armed robbery in which the Walsh Street murder weapon was used.
Rapid gunfire and one of Melbourne's career criminals, Victor Pearce, is left for dead.
In 2002, Victor Pearce, then a free man, was gunned down, another victim of Melbourne's gangland war. Wendy Pearce served time for perjury after the Walsh Street trial. Following her husband's death, she told a Melbourne newspaper Victor was responsible for the Walsh Street shootings. She also named Peter McAvoy, Jed Horton and car thief Gary Abdullah. In 2007, Peter McAvoy was found guilty of making threats to kill Victorian police. He was fined $300. McAvoy now lives in New South Wales. Trevor Pettingill has served time for drug trafficking since the Walsh Street trial. Pettingill and Anthony Farrell are now free men in Melbourne. All 3 maintain their innocence of the Walsh Street killings. Jason Ryan was relocated after the trial but has since left witness protection. He has battled drug addiction in the years since. His whereabouts are unknown. For the families of the victims, the court decision was a verdict they believe set the guilty free.
I feel sorry for the jury myself because I've got a letter from one of the jurors and he's maybe still suffering. He had to have counselling and because he didn't believe that they should have been acquitted.
That heartfelt letter was written by the wife of one of the jury members who lived with her husband's devastation after the not guilty verdict.
There was not one piece of evidence, not one eyewitness, not one fact that could give those jurors the right to bring in a guilty verdict. None of the jurors slept for 2 nights before the verdict, desperately seeking one vital clue to make the decision their hearts were telling them was right. Each of the jurors was deeply disturbed and traumatised by the trial and the verdict that they were forced to make. If only evidence that later became available had been presented at the trial, what a different outcome there may have been.